Hey, what's up everybody? Hammerheart Metal Reviews here once again doing another discography countdown for you. And today I'm super excited. This one has been a long time in the works. I typically don't do discography rankings that are this long too often because there's so much to tackle, but I am doing a band today that has 18 albums. So this is going to be a lengthier video, and I am of course talking about the Legends Manilla Road. So if you've never heard these guys before, they play like epic heavy metal, maybe like pre-power metal. Over the course of their career, 18 albums, they've changed styles quite a bit. Even from album to album, the style shifts slightly. But this stuff is just truly timeless. These guys were around from like 1977 to 2018. They did take a quick break in the middle of their career, like they were on hiatus, but then reformed. Of course, these guys are from Kansas in the USA, and they are led by band leader Mark the Shark Shelton, who was the longtime principal songwriter, lead guitarist, lead vocalist. He did unfortunately pass away in 2018, so we will not be getting any more Manilla Road material. But yeah, like, if you've never heard them before, maybe for fans of bands like Cirith Ungol or Omen, Heavy Load, Manowar, if you're into any sort of bands like that, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of it, at least some of the albums of Manilla Road. I feel like out of the 18 albums, none of them are truly bad. There's definitely some that are a lot better than others, but there's not really any bad ones at all. There's always at least some redeeming qualities. I would say out of the 18, like there's probably 8 or 9 that I will go back to very often. Like the top half of the albums are very stellar and I think are a class above the other ones, but that's not to say the other ones are not good. This band is probably most well known for Mark the Shark Shelton's very unique vocals. They're definitely not going to be for everyone, probably an acquired taste. They're very like nasally in tone, but it just really suits the music well. There's so many great riffs, great solos, and just like they put epic metal on the map. Like he sounds like a sorcerer just spewing tales as he's singing these songs to these epic riffs. These albums, at least the older stuff, always tended to have like one long epic song that the albums were kind of built around. Not to say that's the only good song on the album, of course not. There's tons of good songs on all these albums, but that tended to be a theme on the older albums. But anyways, before I ramble on too long here, I'm already a few minutes into this and I haven't even started in the 18 albums. I don't want this to be a half-hour video, so let's kick this off. Let's see what I've got in what order. So coming in last, in 18th place, I'm going to 1992 and the album The Circus Maximus. So this one, it is under the Manilla Road name, but it's not truly a Manilla Road album. Mark Shelton didn't want it to be released under the Manilla Road name, but the label really pressured him to do it, and that eventually led to the breakup of the band for a few years. But yeah, so the reason that I don't really consider this a true Manilla Road album, it just sounds like 3 different albums mixed together. Like there's 3 different vocalists here. Mark the Shark only does 3 of the songs, and those songs are really strong. But some of the other ones with the different vocalists, they're not quite on par with that. I just find it a very uneven, disjointed album. Lots of styles kind of jammed together. But that being said, the songs that are Mark the Shark singing on them, they are pretty good, like Throne of Blood, Forbidden Zone. So all in all, like I don't absolutely hate this album, but it was an easy choice for me to come in at number 18. So up next at number 17, I'm going to 2011 with the album Playground of the Damned. So I should have said after the Circus Maximus in 1992, they did take quite a break. The next album wasn't out till 2001, so there was almost a 10-year gap with no albums coming out. But then post-reunion, they did release quite a bit of material, and this is one of those albums. But yeah, Playground of the Damned coming in at number 17. I find the approach on this one is really stripped down. It's just not as like epic in scope as some of the previous albums that I'll talk about later. I don't find this one to be quite as engaging as some of the other albums, but overall it is still decent, but it's just one that I don't really go back to that often because if I'm in a Manilla Road mood, I'm going to go to one that I really enjoy, and this one's not quite on that level. But best songs on here, Into the Maelstrom, Abattoir de la Mort. Like, there's still some solid stuff here. It just, as a whole, is not up to par with some of the others, in my opinion. Up next at number 16, I'm going all the way back to 1980 with their debut album, Invasion. So this one, yeah, is definitely not in the metal vein. This is more like a hard rock, progressive rock album, almost like space rock. It's very unique, very experimental, but at the same time, it's very rough and unpolished. Didn't really quite have their trademark sound developed yet. A lot of the songs kind of just sound like random jamming sessions, but better stuff would follow. And I don't want to say there's nothing worth listening to on this album. It's still enjoyable, especially the epic on this album called The Empire is like 13.5 minutes long. This kind of showcased the potential of what would follow and what the band was capable of. So while I don't go to this album as often as other ones, The Empire is still definitely worth checking out. So up next at number 15, I'm going with the first album after they reunited, and that is 2001's Atlantis Rising. So yeah, this was their comeback album, but for a comeback album, I found it a little bit generic and uninspired compared to past works. It's still okay, but the production doesn't really sound that great. The sound's a little muddy. Mark's vocals, he does try some new things as well, and there's even some death metal style singing here and there. There is a backup vocalist now, Hell Roadie, who was on most of the album's post-reunion. And yeah, I prefer Mark the Shark's vocals to Hell Roadie's any day of the week. But like all in all, this still has some good moments. Sea Witch is really good. March of the Gods is a solid song. So all in all, like this is still decent, but it's just once again kind of falling in that category of a pretty good album, but not one that I go back to a ton. So I know this is kind of sounding like I'm being a little bit negative on some of these, but I'm not. I absolutely love Manilla Road. It's just there's 18 albums. Some of them have to come last. So let's keep this going. We're just going to get into even better stuff with each one that I'm talking about. So up next at number 14, I'm actually going with their most recent album, which ended up being their final album from 2017, To Kill a King. So this one, once again, it's a decent album, but it kind of feels similar to some albums they've done before, where in the past with each subsequent release, they'd kind of changed up the style. This one didn't really feel like they changed anything or did anything new. I mean, 18 albums in, what else can you really do at this point? But that being said, I do still like it. I just don't think it's as standout as some other stuff. The opening track, the title track, To Kill a King, it's about 10 minutes long. That one's pretty solid, really killer way to start the album. In the Wake is another really solid song. So all in all, it's still a very decent album. It's just not as standout as some others. Moving right along, up next at number 13, I'm going back to 1982 with their second album, aptly titled Metal. So compared to the debut, this did start to go in a more metal direction. You could almost say this is the very beginning of what's now considered epic metal. Like this would have been one of the first albums in that style for sure. They're really still finding their sound on this album, but it was another step in the right direction. I do find it a little more focused than the debut, where that one was a little all over the place and sounded like jamming. This one's starting to develop a sound and kind of stick to that throughout the album. The songwriting is much more improved than the debut, in my opinion. Best songs on here, Enter the Warrior is solid. And of course, the epic on this album, Cage of Mirrors, is very unique, but super enjoyable. He's got some like maniacal laughing going on in there. Just absolutely killer song, easily the highlight of the album. That's in at number 13. Moving this right along, up next at number 12. I'm going to 2002 with the album Mark of the Beast. So this one's a little unique, even though it's from 2002. This was actually originally recorded in 1981 and was intended to be the second album in between Invasion and Metal. But Mark the Shark didn't like this so much, so they kind of shelved it. But then down the road, just decided to release it anyways. So this one, it does have a very epic feel to it, but it is different. It's more like psychedelic rock influence, not necessarily epic metal. But it's very enjoyable, and the vocals are really solid on this album as well. Like Mark does some different things throughout his career with the vocals, but here he was really starting to develop his sound, and he really like accomplished some great vocals on this album. So a lot of really long songs on here, and like I said, it's just a very different type of album. It's very unique, even in their entire catalog. Not too many of their other albums sound anything like this. But best songs on here, Court of Avalon, Avatar is really great as well. So all in all, a solid addition, and that's why it's in at number 12. Up next at number 11, I'm going to 2013 with the album Mysterium. So this one, it was kind of a mix of like the old style Manilla Road and the newer approach like post-reunion. So like maybe it's not their strongest album overall, but it's still pretty solid, and there's some really standout moments on this. My favorite songs on here: The Gray God Passes, Heritage is really solid. The title track, Mysterium, is a very long, epic closing song to this album. Like, all in all, this one I do really enjoy. It didn't quite make the top 10, but that's just because there's so many goddamn good albums by this band. And let's get into that top 10 now. So that was in at number 11. Let's see the order of the top 10. We're starting to get into the juicy stuff now, where it gets a little tougher. But coming in at number 10, I'm going to 1988 with the album Out of the Abyss. So this one is by far their thrashiest album. Like, this is almost a straight ahead thrash metal album. It's like epic metal, but epic speed / thrash metal. So very unique even in their catalog. They've got some thrashy stuff that I'll get to, but this is by far their most straight ahead thrashy album. The vocals are very aggressive on this album as well. The whole thing is very heavy and fast. The only reason I've got this as 10th compared to some of the others is I don't think the songwriting is quite on par with the 4 albums that preceded this, which I haven't talked about yet. Those ones are just like so kick-ass. I felt like this one was a slight step down from that, but it's still very solid. I do enjoy this one a lot. Best songs on here: Whitechapel, Return of the Old Ones. So yeah, that one's in at number 10. Like I said at the beginning of the video, when I get into the first half, so the top like 8 or 9, that's where it gets into the stuff I listen to all the time. I think it's more like top 8. I'll get into my 9th one first. Coming in 9th from 2005 is Gates of Fire. So this one, while very enjoyable, I don't quite put it on the level of the top 8, so I kind of misspoke there where I said half the albums are better than the other half. I would say they have 8 albums that to me are the ones I go back to all the time. Gates of Fire isn't quite at that mark, but it's very close. I do still listen to this one here and there. It's a very unique album that it's almost like 3 mini EPs combined into one. It's like 3 mini stories or concepts. So it's very large in scope and ambition, but it does accomplish what it sets out to do. And there's some really killer songs on here. Maybe it's not the most consistent the whole way through because it's doing some different things, but if you look at it as 3 mini EPs, it really accomplishes its goal. Favorite songs on here: Behind the Veil, that's a really nice, like, softer track. Fall of Ilium is like a 15-minute epic, which is awesome. And then the beautiful closing track that's about 10 minutes long, Epitaph to the King. Like, all in all, this is a very enjoyable album. Could have maybe been higher, but for me, the top 8 are clearly a step above these. So let's get into that right now. This is where it got really tough for me because I absolutely love all 8 of these albums. So let's see what order I've got them in. Coming in 8th, I am going with the album that's actually right after Gates of Fire from 2008, Voyager. So this one is another epic concept album, but this time it's more cohesive throughout. The whole album is about one concept rather than like 3 mini stories. And that like hits the mark a little more for me, that the whole album is cohesive as a whole. And this has got a really like Viking feel to it, all about like a Viking voyage. And it's very doomy in parts, and like there's still some death metal screaming here and there, but it kind of evokes some feelings and atmosphere of like Viking era Bathory. You can see maybe there's some inspiration there. The clean vocals really shine on this album. He really sounds like a bard just telling tales of Viking times. And yeah, on this album there's actually no Hell Roadie. It's just Mark the Shark Shelton, and I think it's all the better for it. My favorite tracks on here: Tree of Life is awesome. The title track, Voyager, is like more of an epic. Just absolutely awesome stuff. This, if you have this higher than 8th, I don't blame you. This is a very solid album. I absolutely love it. But let's get into what I consider even better stuff. So coming up next at number 7, I'm going all the way to 2015 with their second most recent album, The Blessed Curse. So this one is very epic and very long. It's like 90 minutes, by far their longest album. This got like some almost calm, uplifting songs, but they really work well. So it's not all really heavy. There's still some heavy moments and some heavier tracks, but overall the atmosphere and vibe are just excellent on here. I think this is easily one of the better like modern Manilla Road albums, like post-reunion. It's definitely one of the stronger ones out of the bunch. My only knock on this album is that it could probably be trimmed a little bit, edited down. Like there is one song on here that's on here twice with 2 different versions, and it's not even necessarily the standout track. So like if you get rid of those songs and maybe trim 1 or 2 others, this could be even higher than 7th, because the quality of the good songs on here is absolutely amazing. I really love this one. The title track, The Blessed Curse, is solid. Tomes of Clay is really good. Falling is amazing. The Muse's Kiss is possibly my favorite song on that album. All in all, just really solid stuff. Like I said, could have been even higher if it was edited a little bit. The length holds it back. But that being said, I still have it in 7th, so I still enjoy it quite a bit. Up next at number 6, I'm going with my favorite album post-reunion, and that is 2002's Spiral Castle. So this is right after Atlantis Rising, which I wasn't a huge fan of that album, but this one I found was an absolutely great return to form. This is epic heavy metal, but it got a lot doomier. It brought in a lot of doomy influences here, and there's still some death metal growling going on there too, but just absolutely great riffs and solos, and it's even got like this Middle Eastern vibe in parts. All in all, it's like a little bit of a strange album, but I really dig it. The title track, Spiral Castle, is really solid. 7 Trumpets, Born Upon the Soul, that's one that really has this Middle Eastern vibe and is just really solid. So like I said, this is easily my favorite post-reunion album, but now let's get into the top 5, and this is where it got so hard, because to me, these 5 are by far the 5 best Manilla Road albums, and if you've never heard them before, just go check out these 5 albums. That will tell you if you like them or not. If you're not into any of these 5, you're probably not going to like any of the other stuff. But yeah, these next 5 albums are absolutely stellar, awesome stuff that you need to go listen to if you haven't. So yeah, coming in at number 5, this might make people mad because I know this is highly hailed as possibly their best, but for me, I'm putting it at number 5, going with Mystification from 1987. So this one is a very thrash-oriented album as well. Definitely not as thrashy as Out of the Abyss, but it's probably their second most thrashy album other than that. It's just like, yeah, it's dialed up. The previous albums had started to bring in a little bit of thrash element, but they just brought that to the next level with this album. And it's just chocked full of really fun, catchy songs. It's still got that unique, like, Manilla Road epic style of riffing, but I would consider this album more like power thrash, if that could be its own genre, kind of combining like power metal and thrash metal all into this one very unique thing. But it's just so thrashy and so fun. The guitar work is great, the vocals sound awesome, and no weak moments. Front to back, it's just solid. Favorite songs on here, Valley of Unrest, Mask of Red Death, the title track Mystification is absolutely awesome as well. So yeah, if you have this higher, I understand, but for me, it's coming at number 5. So up next at number 4, might be a surprise that I'm putting this higher than Mystification, but I just absolutely love the vibe on this album, and that is 1990's The Courts of Chaos. So this one, after a couple of like pure thrashy albums, this was more of a return to like epic metal. Got this really great atmosphere in the background. They brought in a lot more keyboards to their sound to really help build this like creepy, doomy atmosphere. There's still some thrashy songs, but it's toned down quite a bit from the last couple albums, and there's more like sprawling epics on this album that I absolutely love. I just really dig this album a lot. The atmosphere and vibe is like second to none. That's the reason why I have it higher than Mystification, even though I absolutely love that album. Favorite songs on here, Dig Me No Grave, Into the Courts of Chaos, absolutely solid. And the long epic on here, The Book of Scalos, absolutely awesome. I know that's technically a bonus track on this song, on this album, depending which version you have. But yeah, that song, if you don't have it, definitely go listen to it because it kicks so much ass. And that's why this is in at number 4. Now let's get into even juicier stuff. This is so hard, but coming in at number 3, I'm going with the third album, 1983's absolute classic, Crystal Logic. So this is probably a lot of people's number 1 album, and I understand that. Easily could be. This is an absolute classic in epic metal. It's got really complex song structures, but the musicianship is so tight. It's just so full of memorable riffs. Like, this is when his guitar playing really took off and gave them that unique Manilla Road sound. Like, this album is what really established their sound and their identity. Even though it's their third album, the first 2 albums didn't really quite do that. As much as I still enjoy them, this is where they really hit the mark with developing their own unique sound. The guitar maybe sounds a little thin on this album, but that's kind of what I think they were going for. The vocals are really nasally, but it's full of personality. You're either going to love it or hate it in terms of the vocals, Probably is going to take you a few listens to get used to it. I can't say the first time that I heard this, I was like, oh my God, the vocals are amazing. No, I don't think I thought that. I thought, I don't know about these vocals, but then you listen to it a little bit more, and finally when it clicks, you're like, okay, I get it. This guy's actually a genius. These lyrics and vocals just suit this music so well. And yeah, this album is just wall-to-wall bangers, just all killer songs. Best ones on here, Necropolis, probably one of their most well-known songs. Dreams of Eschaton is the absolute epic on here. It's like 10 minutes and it's just gorgeous, fucking awesome. Flaming Metal Systems is absolutely amazing as well. Just solid, solid stuff. That's why I'd say at number 3. So now into the top 2. This was really tough. When I went into this, before I re-listened to all these albums, coming into this just in my mind, what I'm ending up putting at number 2 is what I thought I was going to have at number 1, because it had kind of always been my favorite Manilla Road album. But now when I've listened to all 18 of these albums basically in succession and kind of comparing them right next to each other, I've ended up switching my spot. So this might be a surprise, but coming in at number 2, which was formerly my number 1, but right now it's coming at number 2, is Open the Gates. So that is the follow-up album to Crystal Logic, and it is just so mystical. Like, it's just so epic. They started to bring in a little bit more thrash into here. It's got this really great organic sound. Like I said, this is possibly their peak. For a long time, this was my number 1 favorite Manilla Road album, the one I would go back to the most. But yeah, the lyrics are just so fantasy themed, just really full of battle, glory, and just truly, truly epic. Like, epic metal, if you're looking for what the definition of that is, go listen to Open the Gates by Manilla Road, because that's what epic metal should sound like. Favorite songs on here: Metal Strom, The Ninth Wave is a long epic, Astronomica, Witch's Brew is great as well. It's just so well executed. Every song on here really hits the mark, and that's why it's in number 2, but that just leaves 1, and that is, of course, the follow-up album to that from 1986, The Deluge. So this one, it gets a little thrashier than Open the Gates, but I find the solos just really, really shine on this album. It's so epic in scale, and it's just super enjoyable, absolutely killer album. I feel like this might be the best Mark's vocals ever sounded as well. Like, he's kind of been gradually improving from album to album. And here, just like solid from front to back. Every song on here is amazing. I'm putting this one over Open the Gates just because there maybe are a couple moments on Open the Gates where the song could have been a little better. Like, I don't want to knock it. I absolutely love that album. But here, when I was doing this comparison, I just found with the Deluge that there is not even a moment here that I would really change. I love absolutely everything about this album. Shadows in the Black, absolutely killer song. The title track, The Deluge, is so amazing. Hammer of the Witches, so good. Burn them all! Burn them all! Burn them all! My throat is so raspy, I can't do that right now. Divine Victim, another just super catchy song. All in all, yeah, very hard choice, but I'm going with The Deluge as my favorite Manilla Road album. So anyways, this is a very long video because there's 18 albums. Hopefully you stuck around to the end, but these are just my opinions as usual. I'd love to hear yours down below. I'd love to see a ranking from you on all 18 albums, or just let me know your top 5 or what your favorite one is. Just love to get some conversations going, especially about a super underrated band like Manilla Road. So anyways, before I just talk your ear off some more, I want to end this video because it's way too goddamn long. But until next time, give me a like and give me a subscribe. Hammerheart Metal Reviews. Ow!